Hi folks, Gamerbug here again, and this is not me playing the game live. This is just background game footage because I'm about to discuss my thoughts with the Black Death to date. It's going to be a long, rambly kind of video, so if that's what you don't want to see, then turn off. But there is some stuff going on in the background, so that might be exciting. The actual footage was my first attempt at the Crypt Beneath Raven's Reach. And I think it's also Reaper's Rest that I investigated. I admit I didn't look everywhere in these places whilst I was looking for the relic, but this was the first time. There was a second attempt, which actually is the video previous to this one. So this is me just thinking, what's the state of the game right now? And dare I say it, why am I leaving it alone again? Where to start? Good first, bad first, mix it up. I wanted to do good versus bad, but these things never go to plan, as I tend to ramble and I know I'll miss things. But anyway, on with the show. So 0.12, which was the long night, brought a whole new look and feel to the game that was good from an optimization and visual perspective, though some things didn't change for the better, but we can talk about those later. Since then, there have been more and more optimization tweaks, changes to character movement, combat flow, some lighting improvements, and places have been redesigned or newly designed, and that's all good. The character models are still iffy, but they do the job, at least for now, though the female model is still pretty terrible as it uses the male body. The face I can actually handle. Clothing still bleeds through here and there, but it's a lot better than it was. A step back was that they removed a lot of weapons from the game, and that in my opinion isn't a good thing because variety is always welcome. Professions changed as well. Not a great deal, but what they did change wasn't for the best in my opinion. Before 0.12, your skill points were used either for learning new crafting recipes or to buff your character's abilities based on reasonable associations with the profession. So for example, a knight could learn to increase his skill with two-handed swords, a blacksmith with hammers, and a peasant might increase his carrying capacity or the yield he'd get from crops. Now don't get me wrong, these were poorly implemented and many did not work or were just coming soon, but the idea of tailoring your character with skills for crafting and ability enhancements was a pretty good one. Since 0.12 this was removed and all skill points are just for crafting recipes only. Buffs come from days survived, which I'm not a fan of as a system in any shape or form, especially the gold you get given. It's a broken system that rewards just being online, but it's so easy to manipulate, it's ridiculous, but more on that in a minute. Professions are a bit slicker, and skills are presented in a nice UI, even if it sticks occasionally, but overall, the professions are underwhelming. The beggar and peasant feel the most fleshed out, and those are the professions you want to spend the least time as. And the advanced jobs, with the exception of blacksmith, are not very well realised, with some skills being broken or pointless, predominantly class skills. It doesn't help that you appear to be on a progression tree if you just look at it, but in reality it's not. Even though you need to complete the previous profession before being allowed into the later ones, you don't keep any of the knowledge or skills of the previous ones, with the exception of beggar. Also, killing yourself to change your profession is a stupid idea. They probably need to revisit the class specific skills that I mentioned a minute ago, or if I'm honest, just remove them entirely, as a lot of them are fairly pointless and there's literally no consistency. Some are amazing, blacksmith repair, some are okay, the hunter's traps, and some are rubbish, many of the other ones. So yeah, they probably need to look at them again. So other mechanics they introduced include the day and night system, and this is still, I think, a pretty contentious point, and I get why. In 0.11 there was no day and night cycle, and weirdly I never missed it. No idea why, I just didn't. Probably as most games put in darkness and then playing becomes annoying. And as a content creator myself, it makes recording even more annoying because people can't see what's on the screen. Armour doesn't work that way, a game I play a lot, because you have night vision. Of course you don't have night vision in this game, that would be silly. But that makes darkness just unrecordable for me. Once they added night in, I thought, okay, fair enough. But then it was too long, or the days were too short, and actually probably is the latter. And as they added in the magic ninja night bandits that spawn right next to you and one-shot you, night became a thing you didn't want to bother with. Now, they did tweak and change these, the bandits, but they seem to be back to old habits occasionally, as several have spawned a few feet away behind my back recently. I mean, fortunately, I've learned how to avoid them and they're no longer a threat of any sort to me. But they do still do this. At night, all the other random spawns also stop. So deers, pigs, merchants, with the exception of the hunter with the campfire next to him, and so on. These just don't occur until daytime comes back. So that means leaving a town to do anything apart from travel is fairly pointless. I mean, you could do some resource gathering, but it's dark, so it's going to be more difficult anyway. So if you're concerned about nighttime safety, you just sit in a town until daybreak, eating food constantly as you basically stand still burning calories like you were running a marathon. Of course, you can completely bypass night, as I alluded to earlier, and simply log out as it gets dark, and log back in a minute before daybreak, and you get your night survive bonus. Money, experience, all for nothing. No food or water would be lost, and you can just pop off on your merry way. Now, I've never bothered with this as it's clock watching and I can't be bothered, I just can't be asked. Instead, I just had a fair bit of food on me and alt-tabbed and did something else on my PC while the night went past. But these days I just run around doing whatever I want, as it's pretty easy to stay alive and just dodge the guys. So should night be in the game? Well, yeah, sure, but it does need tweaking. Night should only be the actual dark period, so they're basically not the dusk and not the dawn, just the night. That should be the dangerous, and that should be very small. And it should either be half the time it's light. I mean, personally, I'd actually increase daytime so you can get more done in a day. But that then would mean you'd probably have to dump the days survived bonus, which I don't like anyway, because it would take longer for that to roll around, thus making it not as useful anymore. Anyway, back to the point. Back on track now again. Combat got an overhaul, and to be fair, it's actually one area where nothing's really got worse and everything seems better. But there are still a few downsides. Two-handed weapons are still stung with one hand. The damage nerf on weapons was possibly a bit too much. And armour seems to give less protection, at least statistically, than it used to. That said, I have been hit by night bandits and the such, and they haven't one-shotted and killed me, so it must be doing its job somewhat, or that it was the weapon nerf, not sure which. But some bandits do still seem to have a ridiculous health pool, and the weapons they swing at you seem to do more damage than when you swing them back at them, but that could just be the health pool. Combat, it's still glitchy, but it's so much better than before. And they also did away with that tired animation where you just sort of like spazzed out, which was annoying, and well done to them for that. You just can't do as much. So that was great. I just want to mention, I've mentioned this many a time, I love the new jump animation. It works well, works most of the time. It's a small thing, but I really do notice it. I will also say, I did swimming the other day and it looked really stupid, so they probably need to look at that. So, housing. Housing is a mixed bag, as I do like the new houses, though they are, / were, the buggiest of things. And the homesteads and estates are very impressive. The small houses are a nice addition, though there just aren't enough of these, and there's some pretty obvious locations from across the map. Basically, they could just remove crappy knackered out houses that look almost identical and put them there, and there'd be a lot more of it. So the homesteads, or medium-sized houses, I guess, I like and dislike. I like the sort of walled-off insular nature of them. Each one feels like almost like a mini town in itself, with no vendors, obviously. And you do actually feel that that's your house. I used to spend time just outside my house looking up at the stars, or maybe seeing people run past on the occasions that people were actually online, which was quite nice. You know, you're just watching people going, I'm quite safe behind my... Yeah, I mean, they can try and break the doors down, but I'm safe behind my walls, and that was nice. That said, the houses stopped you needing to go into towns, apart from if you were going to sell some gear. And so if you didn't need to go into a town to use the crafting stations there, you are automatically pulling away interaction. The estates, whilst impressive, just highlight this even more. The feeling of owning this place where minions work for you is nice and gives a sense of grandeur, and they look okay. Not amazing, but you know, okay, they need some work. And the 3 doors, that's much better security. However, the peons supply with way too much stuff. I never needed to gather cotton for cloth after they were introduced ever again. And the loom peon cost less resources than the loom normally, which makes no sense. I mean, the principle is good, but the implementation does need work. The small homes are pretty much fine, though they offer a workbench outside that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Everything else I think is spot on with them, though I do wish you could do them up a bit more, at least cosmetically. The only other thing I could suggest would be to choose which station you put up outside. At the moment you can have a workbench one side of your front door and a fireplace the other one. But it would be nice if, for example, maybe you could choose to have a anvil on one side and a furnace on the other side, or an oven and a grinder, or a tannery and a loom. But that may well be beyond the scope of the development team, so not sure. Then, of course, there's the other issue with housing, in that it's a very contested thing and there isn't enough to go around. The irony being is, to be fair, houses are kind of just extra fluff to the game, because you can get by without ever owning one. And the biggest draw, in my opinion, for them is storage, which they've increased the storage limits now, which is brilliant. So a big plus to them for that. After the storage, maybe the bed's useful for spawning, the campfire for cooking, and the well for water. But if you had access to these elsewhere, maybe they wouldn't be that useful after all. So with that said, I really did like the previous setup, where you could get a small place anywhere, with homes in towns or just outside, being functional for a safe place to log out and stash some stuff. I mean, granted, in 0.11 the storage was iffy, the houses were glitchy, but they kind of still are a bit. The thing about those houses would mean people congregated in certain urban areas rather than rural locales. Well, in principle, as low player count has always plagued this game. Pun intended. So removing this has forced everyone into the wilds, where they only encounter each other if they're lucky, or possibly they're attacking their home. Then there's the whole issue of house stealing, which I personally hate. Now, I'm not against having my house raided, having my stuff stolen and my doors left wide open for everyone else to then come in and raid it until I can build them back up. That is just fine and dandy. But having my house stolen is just stupid. Sure, the lack of housing is an issue, but then sort that issue out. Don't patch it with a dumb mechanic that makes no sense. I mean, again, this is my personal opinion. Anyway, following on from housing was the removal and then the reintroduction of crafting stations around Mercia, especially in towns and cities. Again, this made little sense, and the biggest issue was the removal of looms, and everyone said this. And these crafting stations were another reason to congregate in towns and see others that were busy crafting. Now, people may have used that as an excuse to interact with people or just do cheap shots on them, but at least there was interaction. Anyway, looms were basically added back in, so that kind of helped a bit, but I think it needed to be feel that there were these areas people went to do this. Another issue I didn't like was making all the campfires you see dotted around Mercia not usable for cooking purposes, even though they're lit. There's one literally outside a mansion near Dunstead, and there's a lit camp with a lit campfire, and you can't use it. That makes no sense. The bandits have lit campfires, and you can't use them once you've killed the bandits. Doesn't make any sense. Anyway. So, yeah, you basically can only use your self-crafted ones. Now, there's nothing wrong with making us craft fires or learn how to craft fires, especially when one isn't available. But a lit fire with a pot hanging over it should be usable regardless. In my opinion, that was a massive misstep. Speaking of crafting, how is that these days? Well, it's smoother, and I would say it's overall better, but actually it's not the crafting, but the resources that are the issue. Some things are based on the resource node that it's gathered from. So big bountiful cotton bushes give good quality cotton. Certain logs are identifiable as giving quality wood, or other ones are rotten logs and always give poor wood. That makes sense. But then other nodes give the full range of quality, and it makes no sense as to why. I've picked huge bountiful berry bushes that gave me awful berries. I've gone for varying types of iron ores or iron nodes, and they've given me everything from awful to rare. Same with silver. Tarnished silver will give me rare a lot of the time. It doesn't make any sense. The tools, the materials for the tools, the quality of the tools make no difference on what you get, how much you get, the yield, whether you get ore from a silver thing or whether you get silver from it. It just seems random. So it's like either the node should define the quality or the tool, and as it stands, it's pretty much neither. Beyond that though, crafting is actually pretty much fine. Now let's go on to landscape. The big empty landscape. Now Mercia was never busy. It's never been since I played the game, but it feels deader than ever, and this time the pun was not intended. I know the plague's meant to be rampant and people are dropping in the street, and for some weird reason market traders don't feel like moving that dead body next to their market stall 2 feet away would be a good thing to do, but there'd still be more population than there currently is. I like that people actually move about again. You know, they walk, NPCs walk around, guards walk around, but there needs to be a lot more NPCs in the towns and cities, and those cities shouldn't all have boarded up houses everywhere. I'll assume the servers can't handle that sort of stress, but it really needs something to make this place feel like a real place, because it doesn't. The towns and villages have been somewhat revamped, but not enough, and in some cases for the worse. Certain areas have been introduced, the raid areas, but beyond the initial "ooh, what's there?" factor that comes into it, there's no reason to return when you realise nothing's there, apart from the same crap you find everywhere else. Apples, rope, carrots. Wow. These places need to have rare quality good treasure, and we're talking stuff such as, armour, shields, weapons, clothing, things you can't craft or buy. Give us a real reason to go to these raid areas and be impressed with what we find there. It's the whole risk versus reward. Along the risk line as well are the unavoidable plague areas where they force you to stand in a place contracting the plague, either fighting an impassable foe with tons of health or having to break a door down. In these instances, your plague meter feels fast. with, you can gain up to 40% infection, if you stood there and fought toe to toe. And I'm honest, it's a cheap tactic. Because this is how they've gone, we can try and make the game more difficult. But unavoidable damage is bad game design. Yes, you can have plague cures, but that's the equivalent of making someone stock up on 50 health potions because they will be hit by traps consistently that they cannot avoid in a game, rather than skillfully making your way through them. Also, as I said, and you can see in this video, there are times where I am stood and I can stand looking at an enemy who is stood in an area where I'm gaining plague at a rate of like 1 every second or 2. He should be dead. Why is he not dropped dead? Don't give me he's a plague bandit, because the plague affects everybody the same way. If it's that bad, they die. So, bit silly. That said, the landscape, back to them, they do look lovely now. It's a fairly pretty game. The outdoors are filled with rolling hills, snowy trails, creepy ruins, dense woods, and the towns are crap holes. But rightly so, they should be crap holes. They're just not that well designed. So, last up, it's the actual point of the game I want to cover. So this is a sandbox PvP medieval survival game set in a time of the plague. But out of all those things mentioned, almost none ring all that true. I'll give it medieval. Sandbox, it doesn't have any sand and no good toys to play with in it. Or you could say there's all the sand and no toys to play with it. It's not great. The PvP, it's iffy because combat is iffy and there's no player base and no reason to engage in PvP beyond griefing or you're bored. Survival element, it's made difficult by an unfair food and water meter. Not because it's all that unforgiving, it's just meters dropping down quickly. And maybe the game actually doesn't need to be that unforgiving. Survival games don't have to be diabolically hard because it's one element of the game. So yeah, maybe that's something they need to think about. And then there's the plague. Now, the plague feels more of a means to stop players going somewhere than it is a real threat. Though, arguably, when you make a disease the enemy in a game, or at least one of the enemies in a game, it becomes hard to realise in game terms. More so in multiplayer games than single player, where at least the story can drive why the disease is affecting you, and usually it becomes a focal point of the plot or story. Obviously, speaking of story or plot or purpose, well, there isn't one. And to be fair, this isn't the fault of the Black Death per se. A lot of sandbox survival games have no point but to survive, and they hope the player base will fill in the blanks. But then, if they aren't good, it becomes boring quickly. Now, a prime example is DayZ, the mod I'm going to more talk about here than standalone. It started great, and I loved it, but it had to evolve because of how people played the game. Because basically you would gear up and then you would kill people because that's what there was to do. So basically every iteration that came out, there were many different mods of the mod, made it easier to do that, which actually ended up being somewhat, I think, the decline of the game. Because those that liked PvP liked that, those that didn't like PvP didn't like that, but literally you were tripping over an assault rifle in a barn. And that was because the vanilla game showed beyond the gearing up and killing, there wasn't a purpose. It was actually true of the standalone game as well, but I haven't played that in about a year, so I can't comment on its status. The mod, I played a heck of a lot. Okay, to the point. Should you buy this game yet? With there being another update, big update on the horizon. Well, I won't tell you to spend money on it. Maybe if it was on sale around the £5 mark or $5 or whatever, it's worth a punt. It's given me a lot of gameplay. Not going to deny that. And the first time around it, I really was quite enamoured. But revisiting the game now, after 5 updates, it's only kept me interested for a week or so. And that was to do the video series I made, and that was because people asked when you're going to do some Black Death, and I thought, well, what will I do with the Black Death if I make a video? And that's what I decided I'd do. I don't know if they can recreate the feeling I had when I started 0.11, which was quite a broken game, weirdly. But maybe it's because the game from there went in a direction that it just didn't interest me. And it's still there. Even the plans for my beloved BioWare fill me with a certain loathing, as it takes what was my favourite place and once again screws it over to make it more Plague. Again, that's just me being picky, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't feel attached. I will check out the big update once it happens, whenever that is. I believe the devs did offer the chance for earlier access to content creators, but I don't really feel I'm the positive demographic they need for this game. I prefer to stay partisan and not slate it for fun or love it for kudos, because either of them's easy to do. So there's probably lots I missed here, and there's probably too much I ranted on about, and this is all my opinion. It's what I feel. But for now, it's time to take a break again. So until the wipe happens, which is inevitable, I've been told that and I'm fine with that, and then this big update comes along, I won't be back to Mercia unless I can think of a really good reason to come back. And as they are basically turning the servers into a free-for-all until the update happens, that really doesn't appeal to me in the slightest. Also, I would assume most people have tons of gold armor and everything already anyway, so not really sure what that's going to do. So yeah, rant over. Maybe you enjoyed this video, maybe you hate me for it. I think the devs are trying, but I just really don't know where this game's headed. As always, thank you for watching, and I may see you in Mercia again at some point. Till then, Gamerbug out.